Do you sacrifice technique and sacrifice your expectation of what a student should look like because of it? Not necessarily. I think it's just your presentation and the way you're teaching them that has to change, that has to evolve.
Welcome to our podcast. Today we have on a Uechi-Ryu practitioner who I believe is one of the finest teachers I have worked with, Sensei Neil Stone. Neil Stone began his karate training in 1986 under Mike Rozumek. Today he trains under Grandmaster Durkin and runs a dojo in Hollis, New Hampshire. This fall, he is testing for his 9th degree black belt. In this interview, we talk about his early days of training, from starting out practicing in the back of a grocery store, to being a part of one of the largest martial arts schools in the country. Mr. Stone also shares with us his insights and how martial arts training has evolved, and we dive deep into his thoughts on how to be a successful teacher and school owner. If you're someone who loves the martial arts or desires to be a better teacher, then I think there's a lot to be gained from our conversation. Please enjoy Sensei Neil Stone.
Mr. Stone, thank you for joining me here today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on, and it's a pleasure being here at your very large, spacious dojo.
Well, it's nice having you here.
So I think what we'll start with today is, how did you get started in the martial arts?
That's a very interesting question. So at the time, I had a woman that was dating my brother, who worked at a grocery store, who the gentleman that was the owner of the store started a little club in the back room. So when she came to the house one night and mentioned that she was studying karate, that was all I needed to hear. So I started a few months after she did, and I started in the back of a grocery store, in the back room of a store. So it was a very unique and a very interesting way of looking at it and a way of doing things. We do a lot of things down the aisles, and it was a lot of fun. We'd have Pac-Man machines on the outside of the workout space, and people having breaks and stuff, and chatting, and you have the drivers coming in delivering all the groceries and stuff, and it was very interesting, but it worked. It worked for us, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of changes, a lot of things different from then to now, and as I know that we'll probably talk about as we go on.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, that's where I started. Who knows what I would have been doing if I didn't start at that particular moment? Because I had always had the interest in martial arts, and there was another school in my town that I was considering. And now in hindsight, looking back at it, I'm glad I was able to choose the one that I, kind of fell into. So, yeah.
Fantastic. So you got a, in a way, a non-traditional space to work in, but like with the Okinawan dojo culture, maybe a little more traditional in that it's basically whatever is a convenient space to start in.
Yes, yeah, and we weren't there very long. We were only there probably for 4 or 5 months, maybe 6, and then he decided that he wanted to start a school, and so we ended up moving to Tingsboro, Massachusetts, just above a grocery store, a little convenience store. It must kind of work, the vibes must be working the same, and I remember, larger classes, we would go and do certain martial arts movements on the floor, and after class, we'd go downstairs, and there'd be candy bars lying all over the place because of the shaking of the building. And they used to get upset, and the owners of the store used to get a little upset about it and everything, but it was a lot of fun, and the training, like I just mentioned, was very different. It was a lot different than it is now, I think, than it is now. We were talking earlier today about just the culture is different now, and the amount of people in which you have as far as age groups training now are very different than what they used to be, and the expectations were a lot more stern, I think, back then than they are now, because of the diversity of what you have. You have a lot more older folks that are actually studying now that is wonderful. And they're getting themselves mentally, physically, and emotionally stronger and keeping up with things. And it's really great to, that they're able to do that. But, in doing that, other things have to, I don't want to say be sacrificed, but just be changed a little bit. You have to kind of adapt to it. So, but yeah, it was fun. We had a good time back then. Not that we don't enjoy it now and have a good time now, because we do. But, it was just, like I said, it was just different.
Well, if there's anything I know about you and your teaching styles, you like to have fun.
Yes, and I like things to be different. So I like to change things up a lot. As you well know, being a teacher yourself, there's not a lot of curriculum that we have to play with. There's not a lot of things that we can go and teach. So I try to do my best to change it up, and constantly make it fresh. So when when the students come in, they don't push the autopilot button. They can just come in and get their mind engaged and get a totally vacation time away from their lives and everything, at least a couple times a week.
So when growing up through the years in the martial arts, how old did you say you were when you started?
I was 13 when I started.
13.
Yeah.
How has the martial arts affected you, changed you, bettered you throughout your life?
Well, I first started it because I needed more confidence and more self-esteem. I think, and that's something that I think everybody can always develop and grow from. But at the time, I was being very overly abusively bullied, and I did the sport thing, and I had success with that, and the team things and things of that nature. But it didn't give me that individuality of being able to really try to mature and come into my own. And my parents kind of thought that martial arts would be able to do that. And that was one of the main reasons why I did start, was to try to develop my confidence and my self-esteem. And it's done its job. It's, after all these years, I'm still working on it. There's still avenues and still roads of the confidence that I need to develop and work through. But, it's really inspired me and helped me. I've gone through quite a few, like everybody does. They go through a lot of life challenges and life struggles, and I've had my fair share of them, and it's helped me to stay grounded, and to stay focused, and it's a passion. It's a passion that I have, and I think having that passion is what's kind of helped me to grow and to be where I'm at now.
I think that's really important for people to hear, because I'm sure you get the same thing. Some of the students, especially the younger ones, don't realize we're still working on stuff, whether that's the physical side of the martial arts or the mental side of the martial arts. Whenever I tell a student, I just trained with Mr. Durkin yesterday, you still practice? I'm like, yes, every week.
That's important, and I think nowadays that in the martial arts world, as far as I think there's been a lot of. We're very fortunate to have what we have with Mr. Durkin, and the group that he has developed over these years of having that family bond and that hierarchy, and just people to be able to go to and to talk with and to admire and be mentored by, and not a lot of martial arts schools and styles have that. So
True.
We're very, very fortunate to be able to have that. It's kind of very much like a brother-sisterhood, It's people that I've, like we saw today, for instance. I consider them not just my karate brothers and sisters, but really, truly a family that have helped me through a lot of my struggles that I've had in my life, And that's important, You don't know how much people care until, something goes wrong, and then when they're there for you, it really it touches my heart, it makes me feel good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, whether that's with a conversation verbally or with a conversation with some arm pounding, it's good to have those people that help you through it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And they're quick to even want to do other things. I just had a gentleman just saying to me, anytime we want to have lunch or coffee or something, let's do it, and that's kind of unheard of sometimes, I think, in today's society, to have people reach out like that, unless you feel very close to them, right, and have that bond. And that's one of the things I think that has kind of kept me, amongst many other things that have kept me going all of these years, is to know that I have that family, I have that dedicated people that are there to support me and help me, and loyal too. I mean, you don't get any more loyal and dedicated than what we have.
No, we're very lucky. Mr. Durkin's created a very strong, well put together community of practitioners, and what I see, what you do here with your students, you're doing the same thing.
No, thank you.
Passing on that legacy.
To be able to be mentioned along the likes of Mr. Durkin and things like that it's something I really respect, and I thank you.
How old were you when you started teaching?
Well, I started helping when I was 15. I didn't start actually working and making it a career until I was around 19. But I started to learn the inside and outs of teaching when I was probably 15, 16 years old. And the funny thing, well, not funny, I don't know where my life would have gone. I was taking business management classes at 18, 19 years old. And as things so happened, my teacher got sick and had to actually leave the school for a year to get treated. And he knew that school and I didn't really get along. We weren't best of friends. So he had asked me what my intentions were, and if I would consider stopping school to, with the intention of going back, of course, to help run the school while he was gone in his absence. And I thought it was a great opportunity. I went home and talked it over with my parents, and they agreed. And the rest was history. I started full time at 19, trying to run his school. Visiting back and forth, weekly with him, and daily, almost daily, actually dropping mail off and stuff, talking to him about things, the business side of stuff, and just trying to keep it going. We lost quite a few students that year, but at least we were able to keep the doors open.
Right.
Which was his goal. And then when he came back, we were just gangbusters, and we blew the school up, and it became one of the biggest Uechi schools in the world. I think it was a very successful school, and we were a good team together.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I started and kind of how it's evolved. And I was with him for 18 years or so, 17 years, his head instructor, and then as life changes, there was times that I didn't know if I was going to grow much or be able to grow within the field, because the next step would have been ownership, right. And I didn't see him leaving anytime soon. So we ended up kind of parting ways and doing our own thing, and then I did many other jobs actually between leaving him and then starting my own school, just to kind of make sure I could really try to truly find myself and find what I wanted to do. So
important if you're going to start any sort of business, but especially one like this, which takes so much of your mental and physical time.
That it does.
Yes.
Emotional as well.
100%.
Absolutely.
So you've been teaching a bit.
For a little while.
You, to me, are one of the most inspiring and you're a good teacher is what I'm trying to say. You're one of those people I look up to, and the group that we're in, that there's some very good teachers, and I put you as one of them, one of the people that when I first started teaching, when we finally met, I was like, I'm going to try to copy a little bit of what he does.
Thank you.
So could you give any advice to people who want to start teaching the martial arts? Any advice for those who are just getting started, or maybe advice for those who've been doing it for a while and just are looking to improve their teaching skills?
Sure. So I think the first thing is that, if you're going to start your own practice or your own business or you truly have to have the passion for it. And you've got to be passionate about it, because there's going to be days that you just feel like you got to drag yourself to the dojo, and I've had that. I've had those days but once I've gotten here, and once I've surrounded myself around the atmosphere and everything, it's like it's like a light switch. It's very therapeutic for me, and it's helped me a lot in my life to teach and to hear other. It's funny, because a lot of people think that what we teach is just the physicality side of things, and I would have to say that it's the furthest from what we really truly do. I think what we do is we really try to do what we can to assist each individual to be their best selves, and to listen to their stories and to listen to their challenges and their struggles, and to be able to incorporate that into a classroom setting, so everyone can benefit from somebody else's struggle without really highlighting that person and making them feel like it's them that we're talking about. And I think, being able to do that is vital and really hugely important. But as far as, like I said earlier, wanting to start your own facility, you've got to be patient, you've got to be persistent, you've got to be passionate. Those are very important things, because especially patience. I think nowadays, especially in our society, that I think we all lack a lot of. We want it now. We want instant gratification. We want that. We want now. We want our results now. And a lot of times it just doesn't happen that way. Especially in this line of work, you've got to do a lot of things every month to see the benefits months from now. And that's not just the marketing side of things. That's the teaching aspect of it. It's everything. Yeah. As far as what you get after that, I think you had asked, a question that was related to something to the fact that, even after many years of teaching, what could you do to help somebody that might be struggling, whatever. I think the biggest thing is to develop a good community, like Mr. Durkin has done, develop a good community that people are going to really appreciate and consider their second homes, because it inspires them to want to continue to train when they're feeling kind of unpassionate about things or less patient with things, or it gives them that ability to be able to go to someone that they train with and say, oh, good, I'm glad you're here tonight, and kind of reconnect, so that community, I think, is really important, and just treating people as humans and not just as students, which I think, and I know that might be somewhat strange to say, but I don't, when my students come in here, they're not a number. They're not just, you line up in row 4 or be the 5th one over. They're that human being that I really admire and appreciate, because they could be doing so many other things. But instead they decide to come to the dojo once, twice, 3 times a week to give their time to you and try and put that trust in you, So, I think make sure you recognize the little things too. I think a lot of times it's you look at someone and you see the big changes they've made, but you fail to give them the little small nuggets that they've gotten to get to that point. That they've changed to get to that point. So I think that's important too, is to teach the human being in people and not just consider them just another student, another body that's paying your electric bill.
Right.
When
you do that, you're also going to be teaching them better, because you're going to be connecting with them better. You're going to be working on the stuff that they're there to work on. I think that patience is really important.
It's huge.
Yeah. I mean, just working with a 4 or 5-year-old, you can't expect them to nail a Sanshin kata right away or behave perfectly in entire class. Like, that takes time. You get those rare ones where they come in their perfect form and they just sit in a seiza position the whole time. But that's a rarity.
Yes.
And it honestly throws me off a little bit.
Yes.
And then being patient with your fellow man. I mean, think about how that affects not just in the dojo but outside. If we're all more patient with each other,
oh, absolutely,
life would be a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think that the patience, as far as, you can. It's funny because I'll tell students a certain correction or a suggestion. They're like, "Oh, you told me that once before," and I'm like, "Well, it's good job security." I kid with them, and I tell them it's good job security for me. If you forget, that's good because I'll remember. And I'll help you to nurture that quality that we're trying to strive in you. So it's.
Joke, how many times have I told someone to keep their back foot straight and your hands up? I mean, we're going to be saying that till the day we die.
Right, and then somebody else, what's funny is that somebody else will say it in just a small little different way, and the light clicks, and you get frustrated with yourself. You're like, how many times did I tell this person that? And yet this person says it once, and they follow and they pay attention. But, it's almost. I look at every student as kind of like you're bringing up your children. Oftentimes you correct your children for certain things, and they're not paying attention. They're not listening to a word you're saying, right? And then you get frustrated with it, and nothing happens of it. So oftentimes you have to pick and choose when you're going to say what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, so that they're going to retain it and be able to grow from it. So it's like pick your battles so you can win your wars or something like that. So
you touched a bit upon this earlier, but I kind of want to make it its own question. You talked a little bit about how the martial arts has changed over the years. Is there anything you'd like to see in the martial arts change, or how would you like to see the martial arts evolve from this point forward, I guess is my question.
Well, that's the key, right? I think it has to. That's the key word, is evolve. I think it has to. If it doesn't, in fact, I was reading a post just the other day. Somebody had mentioned, will martial arts be around in another 10 years? And why somebody would ask that online, I don't know. But it can be somewhat of a valid question, because again, how many people are willing to evolve and change with it? And that's the whole part of life. Things happen. You've got to evolve. You've got to change. And I think the biggest thing that has changed for me is the diversity, I think, of the ages. When I first started, it wasn't, I don't want to say it was for the young male athletic adult, because it wasn't, but there wasn't an awful lot of females. There wasn't an awful lot of people that were in their 60s, 70s, or even 80s training at those days, and now you get that more. So I think just that alone, you have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to recognize and understand that someone of that stature can't perform or will struggle performing like someone of a younger age. And I think you have to be patient and understand that and be able to nurture that, because if we don't, I think that that's going to be one of the things that would put the martial arts down. I think nowadays, I think you have the older generation looking more for things to be able to do to keep their minds stimulated, to keep their bodies active. And a lot of times people will look at, in fact, I had a gentleman just the other day reach out to us and ask us if it was like the day, because he studied back in the 80s, I think. And it was a tough sport back then, a tough go of it. And he had asked, he says, is it like that now? Because my body can't do that now. And that's just a prime example, right? I mean, what we used to do back in the 80s, the physicality side of it, it has to evolve. It had to change. It had to be a little bit, I mean, do you sacrifice technique and sacrifice your expectation of what a student should look like because of it? Not necessarily. I think it's just your presentation and the way you're teaching them that has to change, that has to evolve. And the only way I've been able to do that, believe it or not, is to go to Mr. Durkin and to see what he does with his older folks, and how he interacts with them, and that's the great thing about having someone like him, and like we mentioned earlier, not a lot of systems have that. Not a lot of systems have a Mr. Durkin that you can go to and not just learn from the physicality side of things. He's always there to be able to talk to and be able to say, hey, I had a struggle with this particular adult at this particular age, dealing with their injuries or dealing with their perspective on things. How can you help me to kind of go and project to them to kind of help them through it, and having someone like that is very helpful for me. But again, I think that's how it has to evolve. Right. I think you have to be able to be willing to accept an older group, an older generation, maybe a less coordinated generation, maybe and just be able to embrace that and know that you have something to offer them.
And you can still teach your classes in a way where the younger or more tougher students can still get that physical workout while the older generation is able to go and train at their pace too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the management of the teacher, though, right?
Right.
Any good, hopefully, a good teacher would be able to do something like that. You may have some newer students that may not be a newer teacher, not as adept and not as connected with those things, but that comes through experience.
Right. We trained with some people who started when they were in their 60s or 70s or 50s, and they've been doing it for 20 plus years now.
It's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah. Imagine if they didn't do an activity that's physical like that, like where their bodies would be, and we both know that they're moving beautifully because they're doing something.
Is that saying that if you sit, you lose it? You got to keep moving to keep it going, that type of thing. I look at my dad, for instance, when my dad had an illness before he passed away and everything, and he used that illness as like I couldn't do anything, and he had an injury quite a few years ago that really, really put a major setbacks on him, but it set him back to the point where he psychologically told himself he couldn't do it, And that's one thing that I know as a teacher don't want to be able. I don't want to do. I don't want to say no. This isn't for you. Right. No, you can't do this. You know what I mean? I think that's important, regardless of who it is, whether they have a disability, whether they have struggling in other aspects of their life. I think that's another way of evolving. There could be some there are some, and I hate to be too. I don't want to be too direct and too negative because all systems and everything that's out there is good for people, and I would never, speak illy of a particular system or style or whatever. But I think that there may be some out there that the older folks wouldn't look into going to and doing because in their minds they couldn't do it. Whereas if they could go and see it and maybe have that teacher work with them. Who knows? Maybe they would be able to benefit from it.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the biggest thing. I think is to be able to take a diverse group of people and be able to help them grow physically, mentally, and emotionally. Because that's our job. Our job is to challenge them in those three respects: physically, mentally, and emotionally. If we can't do that, then we're not doing our job.
I agree. And speaking of being challenged physically, emotionally, what was the other one? Mentally, you have a test coming up.
I do. That was just recently brought up to my attention.
Testing for 9th degree black belt.
And it's crazy, Bill. It really is. it's kind of surreal. There are times that I don't even, where I'm at now, or even levels behind, a couple levels down, I look at it as, am I at that level? But again, you have a teacher, and you have someone that watches over you and watches, and I think when you get to this particular level, it's not so much about the physicality side of things. I think it's more on life struggles. When you hit that adversity and those struggles, how you deal with it, and that I think is what helps you to elevate, to get more elevation in the martial arts, or at where I am. Physicality, I think I can handle myself and do okay, with it. But mm-hmm. I think, and I'm not saying that downgrading anyone else's struggles, but me personally, I feel like I've gone through quite a bit over the last probably last 10 years, mm-hmm. of my life. And without the martial arts, I don't know where I would be. You mentioned that earlier about how it's affected me and so on. I really don't know where I would be. It's been such a rewarding and fulfilling thing for me to do, and it's given me a lot of people to look up to and inspiration to just kind of keep plugging. No matter what life throws at you and how low of lows can be. I think that's has helped me to kind of get to where I'm at. And it's hard. You had mentioned earlier, I think before we got on camera, that it's hard to sometimes talk about yourself. And I struggle with that a lot, but yeah, having Mr. Durkin give me that invite and that invitation to do that, it's very surreal. I kind of looked at him kind of with that perplexed look on my face, kind of like, are you absolutely sure? Because again, you don't feel
right.
Like I don't feel like I'm at that level yet. I don't feel like I'm a deserving candidate for it yet. But obviously he does, and I'm going to go with his guidance and his leadership and his experience, and just go with it, So.
I feel like everything you just said is the same emotions you got when I sent you the text, hey, you want to do an interview?
Yes, I sent you the same thing, like, really, why me, Right, it's just, it's one of those things that I'm very much in my teaching style, especially, is very much more about them,
right?
Very much less about me, and I think that's another thing that could help a school owner, be less about you and more about who you are surrounding yourself around.
It's tough to drop that ego, but when you can do it,
it's a tough pill to swallow,
mm-hmm.
but it's an important pill to swallow.
Yes. It's
an important pill to get you the success I think that you strive for. Mm-hmm. You've got to put other people first. And my students, without a doubt, they're top priority number one. They're first, always. They always will be. Without them, I wouldn't be where I am too. As we talked earlier, I think teaching them as humans and teaching them as just individual people, they've helped me grow. And without them, I wouldn't be where I'm at. So I attribute to a lot of my success, not just with the building and the location and the body that I have. It's, the student body that I have. But just my own success has come a lot from them, and I'll be forever so grateful.
Listening to you talk about how you treat and teach your students and the process you're about to go through for your 9th degree black belt just reminds me of something that I always hear you say whenever you're teaching a seminar for instructors, and that's that inspect what you expect. I do listen.
I know you do. Yeah, that's important. I think that's an important concept, that you inspect what you expect, because if you don't, you're just going to settle for mediocre. And I don't want any of my students or even myself to be mediocre. I'm always striving to try to be the best that I can be. And whether it be having to go and ask for help, or whether it be going to just, guidance, whatever, I've always strive to do the very, very best that I can. Do I always win? No. Am I always successful at it? Absolutely, positively, no. There's a lot of failures that I've had in my life, and a lot of what ifs, a lot of things that I regret, a lot of things that I wish I could do over again. But part of every day, I think I look at it as another opportunity, right? Whatever I did today, I can make tomorrow better, and that's what I'm trying to do.
That's how we learn. I've talked with other people that I've either been interviewed by or interviewed, and we talked about failure in the martial arts, whether that's from the mental standpoint, the spiritual standpoint, or the physical standpoint. And if you take that just as a learning moment, you're going to strive so much more than if you just let that put you down and say, I'm going to quit, I'm done. Like you're saying, just one step at a time, and it'll lead you where you need to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to this next part of my journey, my next part of my adventure. We'll see where it takes me. I'm excited about it. I think I'm more excited for my students.
At this point, the test is more for our students than
Oh,
for
absolutely. It's certainly not about me. It gives me the opportunity with elevation to elevate them, and to help them move along. So it's exciting. It's exciting for them morally than I think it's excited for me.
Any other words of wisdom you'd like to share?
Any other words of wisdom? I don't know. I think sometimes I say to myself, just a happy being. Just be. Just strive to be the best that you can be. Strive to pass along the best that you can pass along, and what you have for knowledge and everything. But don't get so caught up and wrapped up into, other things that are out of, like I quite frankly, I used to do quite often, get myself so wrapped up into other situations and other things that were out of my control, So now what I'm trying to do is just try to be. I'm just trying to be Neil Stone. I'm trying to be, what I can be at the very best, and to be able to contribute what I can contribute, and not really get so wrapped up into, woulda, coulda, shoulda, I'm just me.
Mushin.
Mushin. That's it. Clear your mind and just be. Just be you. Be the natural person that you are, and strive to be the best that you can be. It's all we can do, I suppose, right?
I can't disagree. Mr. Stone, thank you. It's been a privilege.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me again. This was great.